Hi, everyone. This is a really interesting panel we have coming up. This one's actually an hour long. We've been doing other panels that are usually around 25 minutes, but this one, I hope you stay for the whole thing. So when we think about augmented reality, for the non-tech world, augmented reality means using fun face filters through Snapchat that you share with your friends on social media. For businesses, augmented reality can mean engaging with your consumers, creating cool experiences for brand building. And for a company or an industry, augmented reality could be about training or recruitment, team building, a lot of applications there. In this case, we have 4 individuals who are going to talk about augmented reality and how it can help for civic engagement, improving transit, inspire the development of housing, affordable housing, and how it can win over critics who are pushing back on those initiatives. So please welcome to the stage Jasson, Ernest, Dana, and Greg.
Let's get this mic going here for those of you who are watching. Thank you all so much for joining us. I'm Greg Lindsay. Take seats here. We're going to have a brief presentation to start, but yeah, thank you, Bobby, for the very elegant introduction. I was mentally prepping one there, but yeah, obviously, I come from the perspective where I'm an urban tech fellow at Cornell Tech in New York, where I run a project for this year called the Metaverse Metropolis, where I'm thinking about the implications of XR, particularly AR in my instance, at urban scale. And thinking about, of course, that, that obviously, particularly when it comes to AR and when it comes to using these technologies, it will be used to enhance the public realm, or how do we basically capture those urban energies? And so thinking through these implications for policymakers who, of course, have been dealing for years with one crisis to another, the COVID pandemic, various austerity budgets. You may have seen, in a whole separate world right now, the damage to downtowns. And so, policymakers who, of course, had to grapple with a previous generation of disruptive technologies and dealing with that are now, too busy caught up with current crises. So my project is particularly aimed at educating civic officials in what you can do with this tech and how to partner with the companies and the startups that are out there. So we have a great selection here, a perspective of, coming from a startup, coming from a public official, coming from a former public official who's now at Snap, so we have some of the big companies represented as well. And we're going to talk today about basically what you can do for cities and how you can partner with them and what are the use cases and how do we basically bring all of these tools to bear on the public realm and dealing with the public. So I'm very excited to start. Before we get into the panel discussion, to help sort of frame this and foreground it and show you exactly how it's being used already, I'll invite Dana Chermesh, the CEO of inCitu, to give a quick presentation on her augmented reality tech and how she's already working with cities to help them visualize the future of the built environment. So, Dana, if you want to take the podium.
Hello? Yeah, hear me. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you. Greg, Ernest, Jasson, great to be here on this panel. I'm Dana. I'm the founder and CEO of inCitu. I'm an architect in my background from Tel Aviv, Israel. I'm based in New York in the past 6 years. Moved from being an architect to study urban data science at NYU and founded inCitu in New York in 2020. So first, the name inCitu means in its natural place. This is how we believe that we all should and will be able to experience urban change. inCitu is on the mission to bring future cities or the future of cities to life through augmented reality to foster better collaboration around the process of urban change. The problem is our cities are always at the forefront of all the 21st century challenges, whether it's pandemic, it's climate crises, housing shortage, deteriorating infrastructure. And we planners, architects, policymakers put so much effort into planning complex designs, complex projects to adapt for these crises, to build a sustainable and affordable future to all. But time after time, we fail when we come to engage people and the different stakeholders and stakeholder parties in these visions, fail to build strong coalition around the required changes to our cities. inCitu takes these obsolete systems and all the archaic information that is nested in Department of City Plannings or plans or maps and turn it into elegant, informative AR experiences that are available only through smartphone on site as if they're already built, including their impact and all the information around these projects. It can be viewed at the building, neighborhood, district, or even city level. Everything we do we channel through mobile AR. And this is important. I think all of us here are in this very techy, immersive type of conference. The range of XR is from the most blended, accessible, natural, and intuitive tech, such as mobile AR, through the fully immersive. I come from a world of immersive tech. I used to train F-15 pilots on a flight simulator machine in the Israeli Air Force before I became an architect. But when we come to engage residents, day-to-day people, in how their cities are changing, the most natural place for them to train with their bodies is the street, is what they already know. So we try to meet people where they are, providing a suite of channels or touch points for them to discover and explore how their cities are changing, from a mobile app to web map and browser-based AR, to the signage and decals on the street, and even integrations or leveraging the tech of social media platforms and their AR, such as Snap, and we'll talk with Jasson in a minute, and Instagram as well. We work directly with city builders on individual projects, usually these high-profile, usually climate-related, waterfront, and large rezoning type of projects, again, to help them communicate their visions, build strong coalition with the public. We work directly with city governments to convert their entire development activity data into a layer of the future that is available as multiple AR experiences. And we even provide or enable our content as data layer on top of other products out there to empower users in different life situations, again, meeting them in trusted platforms. So for a second, we kind of touched it. Why AR? So from all these range of immersive technologies, and of course, compared to the classic planning processes, AR is very accessible. All you need is your smartphone. No headsets are required. It's very intuitive. We used to do demos, and we stopped because people don't need us to understand how to look around them, basically. And it's very empowering for people. And I don't know if anyone here was ever in a public hearing or a community meeting. I was in this side of the room trying to communicate and seeing how very single type of people coming to attend and coming to mostly oppose. So I guess for people to view or explore projects not as someone showing it to them in a presentation, but literally explore, walk there, train with, again, their bodies as if the future is here, is very empowering and give a sense of agency to people. inCitu, the first version of the product, was launched in 2021. We were very fortunate to have the opportunity to pilot across US cities in the past 2 years with real clients on real projects, with real people, real residents, observing from the street level how communities perceiving these type of technologies, and iterated through the process to improve our product and offering. Some selected projects from these 2 years, from mixed-use development or densifying urban cores and downtowns. This one is from Columbus, Ohio, to assessing different development scenarios and their environmental impact on site in the preliminary phase of the planning, through Resiliency Waterfront Park and a pedestrian bridge that connects a siloed community with this green area. Infill development, so addition of development rights on top of existing buildings, to landmark preservation, and up through infrastructure project outside of cities. And this one on the right, we collaborated with Snap, and specifically with Jasson, on the wildlife crossing that is going to mitigate the impact of human movement on wildlife outside of Agora Hills in California. With all of these, we always tracked who is participating and what is the sentiment. And we were very happy and are very happy to learn time after time that we're able to really disrupt the who question about city planning and how and what they think about it. We're broadening participation. We're bringing much more representative audience and diverse audience to the table in a very natural way. Again, people just view things as they walk down the street. And this results in much less aggressive, more positive conversation, much more informed conversation. So it doesn't mean that everything will be approved or positive and that there will not be opposition. It means that the conversation is more collaborative and informed with real information and people that understand what is being proposed. And at this point, we were in an interesting place, our company. We built this product. We felt that we understand very well how to engage people, how to make them understand and engage with the platform and the information that we channel. But there was all this open data out there still, and we kept chasing project by project. And we asked ourselves, what can AR do with all this open data out there that no one can assess or access or experience before the bulldozer hit the ground and it becomes a construction site, which is usually too late for people to make informed decisions. And we decided to prototype. We're a New York-based company. I interned in the Department of City Planning at some point, so I knew some of the data. We decided to take all of the permits data, tabular, as you see here, and start to restructure it to be actionable, to be able to generate 3D models that are AR ready. So immediately we generated all of New York City's filed and approved permits information in AR. Everything was channeled directly to the app and to the web map to be located in its future site. Everything can be accessed, and you're welcome to check out the map, or if you get to find this QR when it's there, just scan it. Each one of the projects, again, is accessible remotely through the web AR and on-site, anchored to its future place when you are there. So more than 4,000 projects brought to life, but it's AR. No one knew about it because no one sees it unless they know about us. So we decided to do some guerrilla marketing beginning of this year. We burst the streets of the winter of New York with some signage, floor decals, learned a lot, and I guess this will be part of the conversation of how to build a language that really makes people stop and see. And we were pretty shocked to see how many people actually just scan these QR codes. And people trust QR codes now, which I guess it's very different than when we started. But we got so far more than 1,500 individual AR views of real projects in New York, more than 48 hours of New Yorkers seeing the future, and more than 175,000 real upcoming housing units that are now available to explore on the block level, which is very different than hearing this huge number that it's pretty scary, to be honest. More of the fun stuff that we're doing now are walks in the future of different neighborhoods. We are still in the process of building awareness to the fact that the future of New York is actually available in AR. But we also want to get out of New York and scale. So I'm very happy to share that we are onboarding these days our first municipalities cohort. We're looking for 6 municipalities to work with, to do exactly what we did in New York, take their open data, bring it back as, AR experiences that are available, again, on the app, on the web app, and on every site. Super excited to say that Washington, D.C. Department of Buildings was the first one to sign, and we're kicking off next week, basically, and onboarding the rest of the cities these days. So packed and exciting summer in front of us. 2 of our trusted partners, so Snap, we were part of the Ghost Fellowship, and now a long life partner. And this is a fun and exciting one always. And Esri, the GIS company that, again, we prototype a lot, and we are very happy to have these 2 strong partners with us. Just to end, the why now. So I'm going with this idea for more than a decade, I guess, now, but I guess seeing the political alignment or political commitment post-COVID to truly embed or be open to different technologies to disrupt the highly regulated processes and build more inclusive and transparent cities is really strong right now. The technology, of course, just rapidly becoming better and better and more ubiquitous. And most of all, I think we all understand now that we just don't have any choice. We don't have time for lagging, slow, counterproductive planning. We must act fast, and we must allow for strong collaboration and alignment between the parties. Historically, these are Robert Moses and Jane Jacobs, the heroes of urban planning from the 1960s in New York. Planning was always a fight. I truly believe that AR has the power to make this a conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dana. Well, great. This is a perfect segue to get into our panelists, who I also introduce inCitu as we get there. So to my immediate left is Ernest Chrappah, who until very recently was the interim executive director of the Washington, D.C. Department of Buildings, which I was surprised to learn is a very new department. It's very fun to see newish city departments. But as Dana mentioned, signed with Ernest on his way out here to really bring DC into the fold for that. And so my obvious first question for you, Ernest, is what did you see in inCitu in terms of the problems it could solve for you when you were running DOB? And of course, you were working with various XR technologies and programs before that too. And I'm very curious, what did you see as the real strengths of XR, and how were you seeing it actually solve problems you had versus the common problem in technology of, I have this cool technology, what do I do with it? How are you organically solving challenges, and what were those challenges?
Hi, everyone. I think that's a good question. When it came to inCitu, it was really about personally experiencing the power of the technology in a meaningful way. And secondly, identifying a problem where others have solved or tried to solve, and they couldn't do it as well as I thought it could be done. In the context of the built environment, that was sort of like what I was doing for the last 4 years. I was essentially responsible for regulating construction. So going to neighborhood meetings, going to planning meetings, trying to sort of like mediate between the NIMBYs and those who are pro-development, and just watching all that tension, it became clear to me that sometimes people argue about things that are not very real. Somebody will say, oh, well, the building that is coming up next door is going to block my access to the sun. There's going to be too much traffic on the streets. I can't find parking. I'm concerned that my home will be destroyed by the construction next door. These are legitimate concerns, and people have to feel heard. But more importantly, it took away the idea that development can help improve schools, safety, and quality of life. Coming back to inCitu, what I saw is a few things. One, I didn't need a specialized sort of like goggles to see the construction project that is coming next door. All I had to do is just take out my phone, scan something. I'm like, oh, okay, this is what is going to happen. So there's a clean and simplicity application, which was very powerful, because you don't want to get into a space where you have to educate people a whole lot about the technology, learning curve, and all of those issues. It just doesn't work. And then the second part was that it solved a distinct problem. The problem was, how can I see what is coming when I don't want to sift through hundreds of pages of construction drawings? Even if you can sift through it, do you really understand how to measure egress? Do you really understand how to measure building height? It's just too complicated. So with this tool, I just felt it solved the problem in a very clean and easy way. And that was basically the genesis of our conversation.
All right, well, I'll ask a similar version of that question. So Jasson Crockett is public policy manager at Snap, previously worked in economic development at the city of Los Angeles. So you've seen it on both sides. So yeah, a version of that, what are the problems that you are trying to solve with Snap, and how do you frame those conversations with city governments to basically say like, oh yes, I know from experience, or we have recognized that you have this problem. What are those problems, and how do you structure that conversation when you go to cities?
Yeah, absolutely. And as someone who has made the transition from city government to working for a tech company, can I just say that, Ernest, we all see like the glow in your eye being outside now, but respect so much the work that you've done. First and foremost, we need more Ernests in city government. So we are bummed to see you leave, but hopefully you will inspire other folks that take an innovative lens to the work that they do. So my job is, part traditional public policy, working with legislators at the state and local level on issues relevant to us as a company, and then part partnerships. What are the opportunities that we see to take Snap and Snapchat as a product and as a company and support the work of the community, the needs of cities, counties, states, what have you? And what are those opportunities? And the funny thing is that people in government know Snapchat through the eyes of their kids. They know the app and they understand it as a communication platform, but they don't necessarily know a lot about AR technology or the work that we've been doing in this space for so long. I think for us, this opportunity in the civic space is kind of a natural evolution that really tracks closely with the evolution of AR generally. As we stated at the very top, AR started with the front-facing camera and face lenses. We always had the vision and the anticipation that the true promise of AR was being able to layer technology on the lived environment to create fun, creative, immersive experiences using the back camera, the worldview AR experience. And so as we have seen additional adoption of AR and more immersive experiences from the worldview, this opportunity to marry that with the civic space has been fairly natural. And I think what Dana and Ernest are talking about in the planning and public discourse around planning is spot on, because there's just so much value to create. As someone who worked in city government and someone who currently sits on an area planning commission for the city of LA, I can tell you everything Ernest said is just so accurate. The amount of disillusionment with planning and development is largely based on preconceived notions and fears, and so much of that can be cut through with more visual communication. That's the promise of AR. But where we've also seen a lot of power and opportunity is being able to tell stories about the spaces that people inhabit. We're working on a project now. Don't get mad at me. My comms person is in the audience, and you're never supposed to talk about something that hasn't quite launched yet, but I'm just going to make a note, a hint. We have a really cool project coming down the pike where we're working closely with a history museum, a nonprofit organization, and a city to be able to tell the story of a corridor within that city that was changed 50 plus years ago through urban sprawl and redevelopment, and be able to help residents understand better the history, the places and people that shaped that area through AR technology. And now you can read about this in a book, and the History Museum actually put on an amazing exhibit about this at the museum. But being able to experience it on site is so powerful. So that's something we're really excited about replicating and scaling and doing more of. And the really cool thing is that it leverages our city scale technology, location-based AR, that allows creators to anchor experiences within regions that have already been scanned. And so we've scanned Los Angeles or downtown LA, we've scanned Santa Monica, we've scanned London, and hopefully there will be more to come, because I think it's a really a powerful tool. But that's really how we're thinking about it now. And I think there are a number of other verticals that are really good fits beyond planning and development.
All right, I want to come back to you and Ernest on those other verticals, but first I want to go to Dan on this. So you're out there pitching 5 other cities right now. What is the core of your sales pitch? I mean, obviously you covered it in the presentation there, but is it the scale? Is it the speed? Is it the fact that you can do this lighter, quicker, cheaper in some ways? I'm sort of curious, like, what do you think is the real X dimension there? I mean, obviously our whole session's on new tools of civic engagement. The one that stands out for me, and I was surprised I didn't see it in the deck there, the line about your lens has been viewed 100,000 times. The mayor of Kansas City, who said that no one in the history of the world has gone to a planning meeting with 100,000 people in it. You've changed the dimensions of scale there. But what do public officials respond to when you show up and you start pitching of, like, you should be in my cohort? Is it that dimension, or is it something else?
I think there are many technologies today that I guess empower planners in their work. There are better planning tools and assessment and spatial analytics. None of them really tackles the politics of planning. And even when planners go out to do pop-ups in streets or bring headsets to a community meeting to show a fully immersive virtual of the future development, the same people are there. The same 10 people that are non-representatives of their communities. These are never the students or the renters or the young parents. They don't have time to come to these hearings. So I guess just the fact that it's out in the streets, and it's accessible at any time, at any point, from any smartphone, and the feedback is accessible, giving feedback is as accessible as viewing the future. I guess that's complementary to, okay, bring the headsets if you want to the community meeting, show them, but also make sure that everyone has access to it through simply a link or a QR. And that's really, we are obsessed with this low friction experience of you are always one click or one QR away from actually viewing the AR. Then we'll ask you for your opinion, for participation, for whatever. But first we will do this step of true transparency, really make sense out of this open data. I guess the premise there is, we used to say that we democratize city planning, but that's not true, because city planning is, again, publicly available. It's just very inaccessible, and that's the failure. And being able to not just say, oh, it's open data, you can access, but actually make sure that it is accessible, I think that's what makes it very applicable. And
yeah, solving for attention really is what you're doing there. You're scaling the ability of attention to be brought to bear on it. That's really impressive. Well, Ernest and Jasson, I want to come to each of you, and I'll start with you, Ernest, in this. The thing that always grabbed me about how I got interested in XR, because I'm a cities person, not a technologist, I'm non-technical, was the idea that, really looking back, previous generation, the smartphone led to the emergence of business models and platforms like Uber and Airbnb, which allowed you to take private resources, network them together, and make them accessible for a fee. And it always struck me that with XR, particularly AR, you'd be able to literally see into buildings. Now the entire cityscape is potentially as a service or available, or its status is known. And you could apply that to other various fields too. And so Ernest, I'm curious, again, your work at DC, and now that you're a free man, what you might be interested in. Bobby mentioned at the outset, transit is an obvious one, wayfinding, imagining sort of street closures, lots of stuff with mapping involved. I'm curious, where are the other low-hanging fruit that you were doing both in government or that you'd like to explore in your next role?
There are a bunch of them, and I'll start by saying that there are so many challenges that cities face. There'll always be an opportunity for an innovative solution to that problem, whether it's housing, transportation, climate change, creating trust among citizens so they can actually engage with you in a meaningful way. Those are some of the challenges that exist. With respect to the low-hanging fruits, there are a few that I can just think of in terms of the possibility of AR, VR type of technologies to solve that problem. One is actually inspections. Every city you go to, there is some department that deals with building inspections or inspecting something. There's also a department that deals with 311 or citizen complaints. There's also a department that deals with transportation, planning. Staffing shortages have really hit cities hard, more so than the private sector, I would argue. So even if there's a problem that needs to be solved, the bureaucracy is thinking, I don't even have the manpower or woman power to commit to that project. So what I see really is a piece of technology that can improve the efficiency and effectiveness of any given operation. So think of 311 type of complaints. If you see a pothole, you see a trash can somewhere, you have to call to report the issue, right? But with your smartphone, you can just take a picture, it has some elements, and now the city has more data or better informed data to respond to you. Similarly, if a building is under construction, somebody has to check to make sure it is safe. Or given the stage of construction, they followed all guidelines. Again, think of VR as the power of your smartphone camera. You can literally just take a picture, send it to the city can look at the construction plans that they approved and see if what has been built is actually consistent with what is actually out there. And if not, they can take immediate action. These examples are very real, and you are actually solving a pain point that cities have with this technology. So that becomes less about the technology and more about the solution that you've put in place that reduces the strain on city resources, but also creates an opportunity for private sector organizations to work better with the city.
Hang on, similarly, Jasson, I think we're discussing wayfinding is a big opportunity for you as well, and I'm sort of curious, your thoughts on terms of how you're partnering with cities to think about this next generation of the capabilities we can do when it comes to signage, when it comes to, also the signage you need to show the AR experiences there as well, as Dana showed. But yeah, what are some of the problems that Snap is trying to solve right now with that?
Yeah, I think wayfinding is one of them, especially in conjunction, and it doesn't necessarily have to be with cities themselves, but with transit authorities that are. I mean, we are investing close to $900 billion over the next 5 years in infrastructure investment. A lot of that is tied to transit. So there are two things. One, we are trying to, as especially in urban cores, but also in other cities, really double down on public transit. When people arrive at locations, you know, how cool would it be if they have an actual immersive experience to be able to help guide them around the locations that are in proximity to the rail stop that they're arriving at. Especially when you think about major cities that have a number of events, whether it's World Cup, you know, the Olympics coming to America again. There's just tourism is so important. I think that could be a great tool for cities, whether you have a lot of tourism or just a little bit. And then I think also being able to, you know, provide visualization of additional infrastructure changes to communities. So I'm thinking something as nascent as like bike lanes. That is such an important thing in cities, but it also is very, very contentious. Being able to provide that visualization is really, really valuable. And I think Dana pointed something out that is really important. It's the communication piece. It's the feedback loop. So it's not just people being able to see it, but what I would love long term is being able to allow the means for people to articulate and express how they feel about it. I think what we will find is there is so much more support for some of these things than what we hear in city council meetings, because again, to Dana's point, it's 10 people that show up, often that are vehemently against development and change, and it's the same 10 people. And honestly, it's 10 people no matter how big your city is. If your city is 1 million people, if your city is 1,000 people, it's 10 people that come and are incredibly loud. But we need to be able to use AR not just to show visualization of change, but also allow for communication and expression of support, or feelings, I should say, for that change.
Thank you. And Dan, my question for you, the version of the question for you is basically what your product roadmap is like for this, and particularly thinking about how you build out those capabilities and what other questions you want to solve with it. I know, for example, you've done a few where like allowing unbuilt projects to A/B test potential plans on the site, or folding in things like what if, you know, how many affordable housing units it will have, and sort of explainers. How do you imagine a more mature version of inCitu as it evolves, what that will offer, and what other kind of ancillary questions you can build around in addition to showing like this is coming?
So first is really this data enrichment piece, which today we can do on the individual project, and we did that in the wildlife crossing when we took, and Ziv, my head of design, is here, so she was leading that, but took 15 years of research of the Wildlife Federation and the Annenberg Foundation, and truly summarized it into a bite-sized experience that is exciting, engaging, and very easy to digest and to learn. So this is one. I think being able, so in our roadmap, is enabling the automation of this data enrichment, and it's easy again because or low-hanging fruit again, because this is also publicly available information. All the environmental impact, I don't know who here know what SEEKR is, the City Environmental Quality Review. It has different name in different cities, but it's the same, assessing the impact that a certain project will have on the environment, on the economics and society, etc. All of this information, again, is nested in some planning departments, best case scenario in a PDF, worst case as a paper on someone's desk, right? So being able to take this as the same as we did with the 3D components of open data, and layer information that automatically will be showing you the number of housing units, the projection on how it will affect GHG emissions or noise on transportation or rents, right? So this is one, the data enrichment. The other piece is, I guess, kind of breaking down inCitu to the components or the building blocks to be integrated in existing products, platforms, and processes. So integrating inCitu into the planning process. So every applicant, immediately their application is out there. When it's updated, the update is out there. It's also connected to the city's civic engagement platform, which no matter what it is, if it's the 311 or SurveyMonkey or whatever it is, it lets people interact. People don't really need more apps or more platforms. We know that we built what we built to showcase and to conduct all of our prototypes and real projects as well on this platform. But the vision is this becomes just a natural part of cities' life, cities' processes, and people's lives in cities.
Great. All right, I'm going to open up to questions from the audience in a moment because there's more expertise in the audience than there is up here with me. But I do want to ask a question first for definitely for Ernest and hopefully for Jasson as well, which is the all-important question of like, how do I sell? Assuming I am a startup, how do I sell into government? And I think about this because part of my own cohort is the question of where should XR experience and expertise live in city governments? Like, is it the CTO's office or the CIO's office? Should every department effectively have someone who's in charge of thinking through the implications of what XR will do to their business, which of course is not true. So I'm curious in your thoughts. I mean, having run a DOB, but obviously cities have chief innovation officers and various departments like this. How, if I'm approaching a city with this elegant solution to, transportation or something, where do I start? How do I couch that? And who is that person that I find my way into? I mean, obviously, I guess that was you, Ernest. So, I mean, what happened when people approached you with that?
I would start by first just Googling the profile of the mayor and see if he or she or that person generally has like a track record or an open mind to innovation. And that is very important because while the mayor may ask you to go talk to certain department heads or certain people, having that leadership support is like not critical. So this is just basic Google search. Step 2 is to narrow the focus of the problem you're trying to solve and map it to a contemporary challenge that the city is facing. So for example, now cities are talking about how do you get people to the downtown areas because people are working remote, office buildings are empty, property values will go down, property taxes will go down. That means less money to fund education, fill the potholes, and on and on and on and on. So you have to identify how you can help solve that problem or part of that problem. And then you just ask for meetings, flat out. Most public officials, their contact information is available on their website. It may be an assistant that is reading it. It may be the public official directly who's actually reading it, but reach out. And then find people within your network or on social media that can facilitate an introduction. Sometimes it's a lobbyist. Sometimes it's a politician. Sometimes it's a regular employee. Sometimes it's a friend. But just doing that sort of like prospecting or prospect analysis is crucial. And then when you have that meeting, if you are not able to articulate what problem you are solving in 5 minutes or less, you're going to be wasting your time. Because people have like split attention and they want to do things in their head by assessing whether you can help and whether it's worth their time to invest in getting that solution. So those are sort of like the tidbits that I would share, and that's the lens I used in evaluating companies who have something to sell.
Thank you. And then Jasson, as someone who now is back on the side selling into cities, I want to ask before we open it up here, like what are the maybe the biggest stumbling blocks you found with city officials, or the most absurd ones? Like, if when you're sitting across the table from someone who has heard that like the metaverse is dead and that we don't have to care about this anymore because I really need to get up to speed on ChatGPT. What do you find in terms of like, oh, I didn't expect this would be a problem? You mentioned one beforehand about just putting the kind of QR code decals down that like people actually have a problem with that. So I'm curious what you found and how you're working around them.
Yeah. I want to answer that in 2 parts, and I promise you that I will be quick because I want to make sure we get to questions and everyone can get to happy hour. But I think there is a difference between working with cities and working with government and working for cities and for government or contracting directly with them. The example that we touched on earlier, I think Dana mentioned it, is a partnership we did with the Annenberg Foundation, with the National Wildlife Federation, and with the state of California to create an AR experience visualizing this massive wildlife crossing that's going on in the Agora Hills, help to champion the cause and bring awareness around the importance of this. Now, the state was involved, but we didn't necessarily work directly with the state. The state didn't procure with us. We actually worked with a nonprofit entity and a foundation to make it happen. And I think that as a vehicle, while we're still on what is an early stage specifically for this, what I'll loosely call like a civic AR experience, can be powerful because we just need more examples. Examples are what will help sell it. And blueprints that we can then scale are what will help make it easier to actually realize these type of projects with cities. So the more examples we can get, the easier it will be to sell. And I think finding pathways that are far faster than having to procure with government will be super valuable for this space. And it has been for us. And I think that's kind of the structure that we've seen work. Some of the challenges that we face, you mentioned just generally, getting approvals for things like QR codes. A lot of that we've been able to overcome through relationships, but that takes a lot of time. And so I think, we have to continue to put in the work. But while we are putting in the work, building those relationships, building the use cases that we can then showcase, we need to continue to make progress. And so I really, really encourage structures that are not reliant on government to be the procurer, but are a champion and a partner, and it's aligned with their mission. Ernest's point about doing your research is so critical. And then the other thing I will say is that elected offices are really, really good for championing causes, but really so much of the power is held within departments if you're working at the city level or even the county or state level. And so if you are going to work directly with government, if that is the pathway that you're looking to go, being able to find the right stakeholders within departments is so necessary. Everyone goes to the elected office because that's who you see and that's who you assume holds so much of the power, but a lot of the authority really lies with the department. So one structure we've seen is working directly with the department contractor. So you're partnering directly with a private entity that's working on behalf of the department on various projects. We're doing one with a transit authority now, where that structure has helped to really expedite things. And then finally, we're still, as I mentioned, very early stage in this. Structuring things as demo. That allows for cities and counties to legally create structures that move much faster than the traditional procurement process. And that can be another way, another vehicle by which you really expedite the projects that you want to move forward.
Thank you. I would joke beforehand that we were in danger of this turning into a procurement discussion. Sure enough, we got there. Questions from the audience? I can keep going, but obviously, yes. Here, or
I have a mic right here.
Please,
question?
if we can capture it for posterity.
Yeah, I'm afraid I had a very different fantasy about what this was going to be. I thought that there was going to be use of AR that would reveal tremendous citizen involvement, not just showing people, oh, this is what we're thinking of putting in your space, why do you think of it? But from that, creating a kind of metaverse where citizens would say, no, I think it should be 10 feet taller. I think it should be, it should have this color, it should have that color. That was why, and maybe this is utopian on my part, but this is what I thought you were going to be, how you were going to be using the AR, showing people, oh, this is what we're thinking of putting here, but what would you really like to see here? And is this at all possible, and how far away are we from this?
Well, I'll give a brief response and pass it over. Is that, I actually hosted an event like this at Cornell Tech in March, but there it was a case of using virtual reality. We had several speakers who were using basically virtualized spaces to prototype bike lanes and bringing in people into a metaverse context to actually discuss and lay out and then actually create urban designs, which you could then perhaps borrow and bring it back into the real world. So that definitely kind of thing is happening. I should note quickly, London and New York have both used Minecraft for school children to basically do that. So there is trying to sort of cultivate that sense in them, although of course that's not operable plans. But yeah, other examples. I mean, Ernest, how have you used it?
I can maybe answer that this is definitely part of the process. And in the preliminary phase or the assessment, when you have the legal phase that you welcome public input and public opinions, that's definitely how you can use AR to also get visual or ideas actually be embedded into the conversation. What we did here with the open data in New York, we took something that is already a reality, permits that were issued, but the construction hasn't started yet. So this is not even the future. To me, it's the present. It's just our eyes cannot see it, and it's meaningful to first let people understand what's up and coming. So I guess we talked earlier about the roadmap. I see inCitu as capturing the complete planning process from the public input, kind of ideation phase, through the up and coming, just let you see what's going on around you.
And to provide a layer of context that speaks directly to your question, yes, VR can be used for citizen engagement and input on what should be built. There are two scenarios. One is a project you can do as a matter of right. Nobody can stop you. It's a private property issue. So if I have a space and I want to build a house, that's my thing. As long as I comply with zoning regulations, I'm good. And then there's also the other category that is called like getting an entitlement, meaning something that you don't have a right to automatically, but based off community input and policies, you can get access to it. So let's say in Washington, for example, there's a building height, 130 feet. You just cannot exceed that. There are also setback requirements. So if I want to build something and a community wants a pool, but I, as a developer, want to build a playground or a dog park, where I'm going to charge people for it to get a return on my investment, there got to be some type of conversation. Else you run the danger of people telling you what to build, and you will lose money on it, and that's not good for economic development. So through the permitting process, before a permit is actually issued, for scenarios where people can negotiate, they show designs to the community members, show alternatives, get input and final sign-off before they even present the plan for permitting. So I say this all to say there is an opportunity to use VR in engaging people or metaverse-related technologies to engage people in a meaningful way, but it has to be the right scenario so that the process is not weaponized.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more quick question if there's one.
Just put your hand up and I'll give you the mic.
All right. No, it's just we're just trying to get to the Niantic happy hour here. Well, I will just note in passing before we adjourn here quickly that it's a really interesting time to be thinking about XR in the context of cities, because your point there about mayors and excitement for mayors, it's really interesting that the outgoing, this weekend, in fact, at the next meeting of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the outgoing president is Francis Suarez of Miami, notable booster of XR and Web3, and the incoming mayor is even more of a true believer, Mayor Hillary Sheevy of Reno, who has already done a lot in this area. So hopefully, you know, the U.S. Conference of Mayors and others will be looking at more technologies like ours to really sort of embrace this and push it forward in cities. So on that note, I want to thank my panelists. Give a round of applause. Thank you so much to Tana and Jasson and Ernest. And thank you all so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.